All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to a PCA Legislative Affairs update session. Probably some of you have read some news recently about some of the stuff that's been going on here. So we are here to talk about that in a little bit more detail, more specifically Vision 50, a decade of action, and what that means, what it really is, what it comes down to, why now, and what we're doing with it. So I'm Scott Pearce, the Executive Director of Premium Cigar Association. Joshua Habursky, newly minted Deputy Executive Director of the Premium Cigar Association and Chief Lobbyist, Head Lobbyist, whatever lobbyist you want to call him, for the PCA and for all of our many different government affairs programs, overseeing all of that. So let's dive into Vision 50, which was the release that went out to kind of give a little bit of context around that, what that means, and how that's going to kind of change things here a little bit in terms of our approach. So one of the things that we've done, obviously, over the past decade or so, particularly as premium cigars in particular came into the crosshairs and under the jurisdiction of the FDA, is we had to mount a defense. And that defense obviously takes a lot of years. For anybody not familiar with any kind of the regulatory time frame of how things work, it's glacial oftentimes. Oftentimes it's hurry up and wait, and then suddenly it's okay, all arms on all hands on deck kind of thing. So we mounted a big strategic defensive initiative that took place, obviously, Capitol Hill and in the court system as well, and trying to work both regulatory policy as well as a litigation strategy as well. So when we proceeded down that path, obviously, there were a few lawsuits. We had the warning labels, substantial equivalence. We got a good victory on the warning labels, and we found ourselves in the midst of being able to get a pathway forward for substantial equivalence with a delay. Obviously, that means products have been coming to your shelves, and there's no substantial equivalence pre-market review for premium cigars. Also on record in terms of us being the lowest enforcement priority from the FDA, with the admission that there is really no youth access problem with premium cigars. So now that we've gotten through that point, when we've been building up our machine in terms of our advocacy, we got to a point where we took a look at it and said, okay, we need to start taking our fight to Capitol Hills, not just here a few steps away from the office, but we need to be in all 50 states. We need to be in DC and anywhere we possibly can in the localities, because that's obviously where the rubber meets the road for our retailers. And this tax policy, any sort of employment regulatory policy, tax cap issues, flavor bans, smoking bans, anything that you can possibly think of. When we took a look at that landscape, we said, well, there's obviously a path that we can carve out. And if we take ourselves and give ourselves a good 10 years of a decade of action, what can we accomplish when we put our resources and get all together, get organized, and get a commitment from grassroots all the way up here through the national office? What is it we believe that we can accomplish in these next 10 years in all 50 states? So there's two aspects that we're looking at here of what we do programmatically here from an advocacy standpoint. First and foremost, how do we protect your businesses? And obviously, as business owners, the biggest challenge that you have is changes. Anything that comes in and changes as far as your business is concerned and how you operate, and having to guess, and what do I need to file now? How do I need to be in compliance? Now I have to put a whole new process in place. For example, in Virginia, they just changed alcohol laws. My wife owns a retail business, and now suddenly there's a whole entire new process, and ended up having to spend multiple days and time away of having to refile it. So we want to make sure that those changes are mitigated as much as possible. No tax increases, no bans, no changes in terms of how you operate, no filing or compliance issues. The second part is, now how can we mount an offensive and go and put in proactive policy, positive policy that will benefit your business when it's enacted? And these can take the form of cigar bar legislation. It can take the form of tax caps. It can take the form of multiple different ways in which we approach how we connect with your state capitals and state resources in order for us to go after these policies and start making an offensive in favor of small business tax and or other policies, business policies. So that is the framework. I mean, the preamble that we sent out sort of addresses that. The other aspect of this is that we feel like we now have what we need in place as far as our advocacy foundation to build all this out through state associations and through state association affiliation and reciprocal agreements with the national level. This is something that we've been building on, and we've been kind of taking different pieces from different industries from which we have different experiences, and taking the best of each of these to put together something that we believe is actually going to be a very beneficial for this industry and this association as well as state associations, to make sure the congruence is there, to make sure that it's all aligned and everybody is utilizing the resources necessary for each specific task. And by that, we mean, look, state associations and state retailers being very, very active, involved, and engaged with the local representatives, with the local leaders, utilizing all of your customer relationships and how that will come into play in order to help influence the policies that we need. The aspect thereof, of course, and we'll be putting out more information in the ensuing weeks about the infrastructure we can help put into place, so that way your focus is strictly on that very, very defined lane, which is getting the influence, making sure we're tied in, and making sure that we're able to progress things forward with our help. So on that note, we took a look at the totality of everything, and this is where some of the staff alignment comes into play. Glenn Loop has been here now for almost a year officially, helping us out with state advocacy. Within the context of his responsibilities, he's very, very heavily involved with local retailers across the country on a daily basis. And with his mandate to create and or help shepherd state associations, it's a natural fit that Glenn be out there helping with member relations and being that first line of connection with our retail members, on top of doing some membership development and outreach as well. That will work hand in hand with the membership director that we have with Aaron Holland, whose duties and everything else really stay the same. Really, it's just that Glenn is going to be more boots on the ground because of the nature of his job. Just made sense to align those resources there so that we can maximize membership relations, membership development as much as possible, while still maintaining membership operations and services. So this was a way for us to do that. So that's where that staff alignment comes from. Second to that as well, with Josh and expanding here with the deputy executive director role, really looking at external relations. One of the things that we looked at when we assessed all of this were maybe not, I wouldn't call them blind spots, but areas where we have not necessarily been as active, and obviously for good reason. So now we're taking this approach, proactively going to external industries that are related to retail. How can we get seats at their table? For example, consumer technology industry and the shaft policy they have with text messaging. How do we get involved with that, making sure that our retailers are in compliance and have good pathways to be able to connect with your customers via text message and not getting things blocked because of this, or if it's banking, or if it's payment services. There's a lot of different avenues in different industries that you utilize every single day in your businesses, and we need to be in constant communications with them, and we need to be advocating for you within their different spheres. Whether, again, banking, that could become an issue as well, as we've seen with other industries. So not only that, but then also taking a look at the grand scope of this, which is fundraising. And obviously, that's the thing that nobody really wants to talk about, but everybody always recognizes is the need, right? We've got to have resources and to help do this. And so as part of that, again, both at the state association level as well as the national level, Josh will be spearheading a lot of those fundraising activities, helping states to raise money, helping PCA then to come in and join with you, and helping to raise that money and allocate the resources where you need them in order for you to A, fight for your stores, or B, let's get tax caps and cigar bar legislation and this proactive policy passed. So that is a very, very sort of nuts and bolts around the sort of the birth and implementation that we're starting off with for the Vision 50. Again, this is something we're going to be foot on the gas for 10 years. And after that 10 years, we'll reassess. And this will be a continuous reassessment. But after that 10 years, we're going to take a look at the next decade. And we're going to say, okay, what is it we want to be able to accomplish in the next 10 years? And we have a grand vision of where we want the industry to be in that 10 years. So the very first step that we're kicking this off, the first phase, is this fact-finding survey and membership outreach and focus group. And I'm going to have Josh kind of dive into that, because that's going to kick off immediately after this. We're going to start sending this out, start getting your feedback. So Josh, if you want to dive in, explain what the fact-finding is all about, why we're doing it, and what we are looking to get from our members to build out this Vision 50 plan that will be unveiled at the annual meeting at the trade show this year.
Absolutely, Scott. I think that there's a lot of exciting changes on the horizon. You've seen a steady drumbeat in January and February of actions that the association has taken, addressing member concerns, addressing gaps, and I think that this is a continuation of that. It starts with the mission statement and focusing on the business of retailing, expanding our advocacy plan to fit those needs, fit the challenges of the day, and work within the resource constraints that the association has. So, Vision 50 is really a narrative shift. It's how we are going to approach the work that we do day in and day out. And nothing's going to change on that defensive aspect. That was one thing that I wanted to ensure when we were drafting the preamble for this, is that fighting for the industry is going to continue. That's something that, if there's issues that arise, we will tackle those challenges. But we also want to look into the future and come up with a plan to make these businesses grow, sustain, and thrive within the regulatory and legislative environment. So, we're crafting different resources along the way and also getting feedback on those resources. This is a conversation. This is not an edict. We are using and making informed decisions, informed recommendations that will come out from time to time from the association perspective. Know that goes through a lot of vetting process. Know that some of it will spark uncomfortable conversations. Know that everything is on the table. So the issues or the elephants in the room, so to speak, as it relates to the Premium Cigar Association and our policy stances, those are things that we're going to actively discuss with our membership and make sure that we get it right, make sure that the voices are heard. I think that, and it's in line, Vision 50 is totally in line in everything that, Scott, you have spearheaded with the mission statement, with the addition of an open elections going back to last year for the board of directors, and then also having manufacturers on the board. This is a collection of the industry voices in crafting a battle plan that we can go and obviously there's that state-centric focus, which Glenn, I'm really excited to work with him on that. And then also the federal side of things, because with the Food and Drug Administration, we have a lot of upcoming challenges. We know that we're in the crosshairs between the FDA itself, the National Academies of Sciences, as they prepare to release their research report on the health effects and usage patterns of premium cigars. We are taking positive, proactive action that will, again, as I mentioned, we're trying to improve the image of the industry. We're trying to acknowledge that we, as the Premium Cigar Association, our industry allies, other associations, other advocacy organizations that share similar sentiments and positions than we do, can self-regulate. That is a core tenet of Vision 50, that we don't need somebody, in Washington, a bureaucrat that's unelected, making decisions that affect the livelihoods of small businesses and small manufacturers. Right. And I think that was the impetus with one of our statements that came out last week along the lines of responsible marketing. That was an indication of, and it was heavily vetted with our membership, with our board of directors and our staff, that this is something that, being in the crosshairs of the Food and Drug Administration, being at the table with the National Academies of Sciences, we don't want to have the opposition, and I can see it now, seeing a PowerPoint presentation with some of the products that are out there. We did not make any mention of individual products or companies. We're just saying, have some self-reflection, have some common sense, and think about the totality of the industry. If whatever you're creating, and again, it's in that statement, and I asked folks, I've seen a lot of positives about the statement. I've seen some, gripes about the statement. That's concerns. That's part of the process. We're aware that was going to occur. But I would ask to read the whole statement. We are not here to stifle creativity. We're not here to assess punitive damages. We are not the Food and Drug Administration. We took that step so that the Food and Drug Administration doesn't come in and go after the industry at large.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to let's provide some grand context here. Is for several years, and we've been talking about this, and board member Jay Davis on here, self-governance is key. Why is it key? Why is this necessary? So this has precedent going back, 70 some odd years. If you think back to the Motion Picture Association and why they were formed in the first place, is that the federal government was coming in because they wanted to basically regulate the kind of content that could or could not go into movies and what was offensive, so on and so forth. And so the Motion Picture Association was formed. They got Jack Valente, who was a former congressman, to come in and head it so that way they could build their own system. I came from healthcare. I've had conversations with Rafael Nodal, who also was in healthcare as a hospital executive, about their self-regulation that ended up allowing them to proliferate and kind of do what they needed to do. Mine was in the radiology space. His was obviously in a healthcare executive space. So those are just two examples. I mean, the standards and guidelines and so on and so forth are benchmarks and are standards of excellence in most industries, if not all of them that operate. And so the challenge that we've been facing is that we're pretty nascent within this space as a premium cigar industry. And so this is why we're putting these guideposts in. This is why we're putting these benchmarks in, is because we need to have standards of excellence, because when the regulators come calling, and they will come calling, I don't believe that anybody is deluded enough to believe that they won't come calling, is that we have a defense. We have material to be able to have conversations with them. We've got great studies, we've got great data, we've got great things on our side in documentation, but we also have to have standards of excellence. We have to have standards of procedures as well. And that's one of the things that we're spearheading here for that very reason. Why? Because we're the ones that are in the conversations with Capitol Hill. We're the ones that are talking with the National Academies of Sciences. We know what the antis are talking about when they're holding up a Cigar Aficionado cover with Nick Jonas on there, saying that we're using this for predatory practices to go after kids because we want kids to smoke cigars. That's the level of discourse that we're at. So this is all facilitating this, and this is why the launch of this program, coinciding with this fact-finding mission, is to continue this dialogue. The more that we can get our membership involved in this dialogue, answering the tough questions, to formulate and continuously formulate the path forward, gives us the best opportunity for success and continuous success, and building upon each success for the future sustainability of the industry.
Yeah, it is going to be a series of conversations, as we mentioned. But we're going to. It begins today, this afternoon. A survey will go out to all of our retail membership, asking about 20 different questions about policy priorities, about concerns. These will be ongoing conversations. We're going to send out multiple surveys over this 3-month fact-finding period. We're also going to conduct some focus groups. And again, this is about the issue areas that we haven't had conversations about in the past. Obviously, with the rulemaking process, the discussion in the states about flavoring, that's going to be a focus group topic. That is something that we want to discuss.
And I think one thing to note, sorry to cut you off there, but one thing to note here is that the Vision 50 aspect is unique in the regard that we're looking for a great playbook, but like any great playbook, it needs to be adaptable for what is out there, what the opposition is posing. And so when we're looking at the 50 states, a large portion of what we do, say in New York, where we're doing some great things up there with the New York State Association, and they're having phenomenal progress. We can take a lot of what we're learning there and a lot of material there and apply it somewhere else. However, Wisconsin and New Mexico are very different, say, from New York. So we want to be able to approach these states with the specific nuance that each state and state legislature has, but with all of the data and research and other good progress and other good things that these other states are doing. So we want to have a massive 50-state network, sharing data back and forth, sharing experiences back and forth, so that each state has a specific targeted playbook for success for those specific issues. And that's why the conversations around flavor bans or everything from even going back to the Arizona Cavendish pipe issue, for example, and pipe tobacco. There's all kinds of different nuances in each state that we know we can tackle. And that's why we want to go ahead and do this fact-finding mission, is because you all will know best, and you need to articulate it to us how we can formulate these battle plans.
And areas for improvement or creation of new resources. In the past few weeks, we released a hearing prep guide. So if you are testifying in front of a state or a state committee or even at the federal level if you're conducting a congressional meeting. So those types of resources are going to be ongoing. Next week, we will be releasing our updated state association handbook. So, those things are all to build the foundations to, go after those gaps and make sure that our flanks are protected, but also to build that network out so that we are able to introduce positive actions and things. We are following the models of several other associations. Not necessarily in the tobacco space as it relates to self-regulation. I think the Motion Picture Association is a perfect example, but also the alcohol industry. Just yesterday, the Department of Treasury talked about deregulation and streamlining processes to make small businesses in the alcohol, wine, spirits, and beer industry more competitive, to focus on the small businesses and small manufacturers because it's becoming too corporatized. Well, I think the same argument can be made with the FDA as it relates to tobacco products. The compliance barrier that's required, you can't be a small family operation and have to do thousands of hours of paperwork, hundreds of millions of dollars in order to enter the market. And that it's important that we get representation from the smallest companies, the single store retailers, and also the large entities, so that we are providing the best arguments that represent the industry at large.
And so one of the very interesting things, and this is another key point of this aspect, is in order for us to get the seat at that table, where we're just talking about this deregulation making more competitive in the wine and spirits industry, they have very good self-regulatory practices already in place, right? Drink responsibly, all of that stuff. That's not required by federal law. That's their own aspect, and that's what they have taken on. So when we take ourselves and put ourselves in that same context, in order for us to have a very serious seat at the table, to have somebody across the table from us looking to regulate us and or help us, we have to be able to come with something similar in the sense of saying, here's how responsibly we're operating. Therefore, X, Y, and Z must take place in order for this to happen. If we're seen as the Wild West, and we don't have any documentation or proof or anything else as far as that's concerned, we're not going to have any favorable ears on the other side of the table.
Yeah. And there's a lot of shifts, this year in personnel with the Food and Drug Administration. Right now, you have the confirmation hearing of Dr. Califf that is pending, still kind of in limbo at this point. And it's kind of crazy. This afternoon at 2:00, the Center for Tobacco Products is hosting a webinar about their intention of prohibiting flavors, among other regulatory actions. And, it's a challenge because you don't have a formal Senate-confirmed FDA commissioner on board, yet they're making major decisions that affect the industry. You also have Mitch Zeller, the director for the Center of Tobacco Products, who's exiting his role this year. They're actually actively hiring for that right now. And so with those personnel changes, there's opportunities for us to build new lines of communication, to work with our industry partners to see if we can change it where it is a balance between what the FDA's intentions are. And I think that we all can agree that they've been very far flung for the past 10 years and rooted in activism and zealotry, and peel that back where we can get a middle ground where, yes, we will make considerations. And you know what? We as premium cigars, we are the lowest in form of enforcement priority because we don't have the youth access, we don't have the public health issues, and we don't have the addiction issues. So, putting that messaging forward, getting them to acknowledge it, and understanding that it needs to be a tiered system, that if you are a premium cigar meeting this definition, you should be at the lowest end of the regulatory scrutiny level. And then it scales forward. We are going to protect the products that are on our members' shelves. And we recognize in that you can go to cigaraction.org and see our policy statement on characterizing flavors. You can go on there and see, you talked about resources on the states and uniforming. We just released a new document about tax caps, model tax cap legislation. So if you want to get out there and be a part of this advocacy movement, we're creating the tools for you to get involved. And it is one of those things that we recognize the resource constraints. So you can go and work with us and develop the state association so that it can flourish in the long run. But it will take some time, and we're willing to invest that time. That's why, Glenn, myself, Ryan, Scott, Aaron, our team is devoting a lot of time and energy into this advocacy strategic plan.
Yeah, and just kind of going back to a little bit, if we take a look back here over the past 14 years or so, really since S-chip, and we kind of go forward from there, you can see sort of the approach, obviously, backed by the anti-groups through the FDA and Center for Tobacco Products. That's what it feels like to be on a receiving end when you have absolutely no seat at the table. You're not involved in any kind of dialogue whatsoever, and you are at the whims of bureaucrats. So as we've worked to kind of defend all that off and gotten our footing now is what Vision 50 really kind of comes down to in a nutshell is this. This is our chance to not be simply just sit back and have to take the whims of bureaucrats. This is a way for us to establish ourselves as partners, for lack of a better term, as partners at that regulatory table in order to ensure a path forward for success and prosperity for the premium cigar and pipe industry, and especially tobacco industry. And that's what that mission statement that Josh referred to is all about, the growth of specialty tobacco retailing. And that's exactly what this is all poised to do, is to make sure that not only is there a stable business environment, that any change that comes is a change for the positive, that any change that would enact anything that's punitive or deleterious to your business is killed, but that things that would be positive for your business, we go and we proactively enact and work as hard as we possibly can in the right ways in order to get those policies passed, allowing you to flourish even more so. So on that note, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up here.
I think just in terms of like the focus groups, we as I mentioned, we're going to be conducting some on topic specific. We're also, we've always had a working relationship with Cigar Rights of America. On the advocacy front, we have, weekly calls discussing the topics of the day and formulating strategy. We're also working with other industry partners in this strategic plan and getting their input on certain initiatives that we're going to be taking, and hope to get cooperation with those other associations and other entities. So I will be reaching out to folks representing those other associations and coalitions and different partners, as Scott mentioned, the external relations side too. That's something that is very new and fresh for Vision 50. That will be a component of it. And that really means if you can think of something that affects your business, whether it's retailing or manufacturing, anything in premium cigars that affects your business that is done by a non-governmental entity. So you use texting as the example, payment processing, social media, search engine optimization, things, the policies that are created by either private businesses or associations, other self-regulating associations that affect what the PCA members do. So we're really going to explore that angle and see if we can get a seat at the table for ones that have gone a little bit too far, raise concerns, draw attention to the issue itself, and ask for some considerations, cite the data, and that's has always been our strong suit. I'm glad when people say trust the science, use the data, although I think it's overused now. But we've always been trusting the science and the data with the past study, and the information that we set forth is not coming from the organization. We didn't, pay for a study ourselves to do this. Right. This was done by the NIH, by the FDA. So we're utilizing their own information and saying, whoa, you're going too far with this, which we did in the NASM presentation multiple times and sent follow-up information. That is going to be a very informative release, one that we're preparing for. And again, know that we understand the gravity of the words that we select, whether it's in commentary here on Facebook Live or written statements that we produce as an association. And, the responsible marketing statement, that was carefully selected because of the period of time that we're in and all of the factors that
several
are
months of
surrounding
conversation, and
several months of conversation,
being grilled by anti-groups with the FDA and NASM about certain things. And again, it goes back to this, is that, again, as you said, whether it's banking or marketing, as far as texting and reaching out, that kind of stuff, when we're approaching them and we're engaging in conversations, as we already have, where it comes down to the shaft policy about texting customers, their first question, if not the first one, immediately they're going to ask us, so what steps do you have in place, or what do you have in place to ensure that you're complying, that you're not selling to underage, that you're not doing X, that you're not doing Y, you're not doing Z, so that they can be assured that if they do adjust, that their membership is not going to have a backlash against them. That way they can trust what we have in place. So all of this leads to us having our own structures in place that present to outside groups, whether that's regulatory groups or whether it's other industries that will have an impact, and their policies will have an impact on how you're able to operate your businesses.
Yeah.
So when we look forward to this fact-finding mission and then unveiling the totality of that, plus the implementation and plan of execution at the annual meeting in July, where we'll go over all of this and how this is going to get implemented and how it gets impacted and how you get involved and where this rubber is going to meet the road, starting with the next legislative session.
Yep. So, just to give the timeline of releases, in the past 2 weeks, we've done the responsible marketing statement. We've done the hearing prep. We've done, address some different issues about international policy that are available on premiumcigars.org, as well as Cigar Action. We've had 9 grassroots releases or 9 that were including carryover legislation at the state level, 6 new grassroots alerts in 2022. So, we're churning out a lot of information. I would ask folks to review that, provide some input to us. My email address is joshua@premiumcigars.org. Feel free to shoot us a note, give us feedback, positive or negative. We want to hear from our membership and make sure that we do this correctly. We understand the magnitude of this undertaking and that it's going to be a long, tough process to get to that final strategic plan. We've done, when I came on board to the association 3 years ago, we had a 1-year plan. The next year we did a 2-year congressional cycle for each Congress. And now we feel as though we're in the right predicament to create a strategic plan. Again, this is very adaptive. There'll be new resources. And next week, this afternoon, the retail members will receive the first survey asking for feedback and input. Next Tuesday, we will be releasing our updated PCA state handbook. Glenn and I will be having ongoing conversations with new state associations. We will also be doing retail visits. I've been in New Jersey, Maryland, Florida, Virginia, Richmond area, meeting with retailers, meeting with board members, meeting with state lobbyists to provide, we have kind of a standard questionnaire for folks that we're trying to get some input on and see if we're taking this in the right direction. So we will be providing some updates with our findings as we go. But if you have a question about it, or if we're unclear about something in what we release, please reach out. This is an open dialogue. We don't want the Monday morning quarterbacks where people are criticizing openly if you don't give us the opportunity to at least respond and provide additional context. And we know that that can happen, but please bear in mind that this is an arduous task and one that is necessary and essential for the longevity of the premium cigar industry.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And again, for all those of you that are watching this live, we really appreciate your time. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your Thursday and going into the weekend. And hopefully a lot of people out there want to come in and smoke some cigars in your lovely stores and lounges. And for those of you that are watching this recorded, please, again, reach out to us anytime with any questions. And we look forward to seeing you on another program shortly. So thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your afternoon. Take care.